Thank you, Tineke, Sander, and Ekaterini. And now we proceed to the national reform proposals, and starting from the Nordic countries. So, Beate, please.
Thank you very much. The company is an ingenious invention. It allows for funds to be channeled from investors all over the world into a project that has great business potential, but where the entrepreneur would not be able to raise that kind of money from a bank. The company structure has allowed for a fantastic creation of value for investors, for employees. It provides jobs, it provides revenues, and it is very important. They are the backbone of our economies and provide great social good. At the same time, we know that they are a part of the system that we have heard described through the keynote speeches this morning. We know that we cannot just say, keep going to the companies. We can talk about a few adjustments, but otherwise keep going, you're doing great, because we're not. We know one thing for sure. There are many things that we will discuss over this conference and in the coming months and years, but there is one thing we know for sure, that business as usual is not an alternative. Companies are fantastic engines for creating a lot of good, and they are also important drivers in a very, very fast race towards a cliff. So we cannot continue in that direction. We need to shift, and we need a shift of such a magnitude that the voluntary efforts of the companies is not enough. And it is not enough also because today's system does not give the competitive advantage to companies that want to be a part of this shift towards sustainability. The system today gives the competitive advantage to the unsustainable company, and it is not even rational for companies trying to shift away from business as usual and towards sustainability to, for example, report honestly about this through the CSR reporting requirements that are popping up all over the place as the compromise fix. It's not logical financially, because they would then be perceived as less good companies than all those companies that are greenwashing. We know this from empirical studies, that it's often the ugliest companies that use the most makeup. So the good reports may very well be produced by companies that are doing very unsustainable things. So we need change, and we know, as we heard from Andrew's presentation, that company law provides ample room. And we know also that because of what company law for historical reasons regulates, the relationship between shareholders and companies, and because of what company law doesn't say, company law has provided also room for the development of the main barrier for sustainable companies, namely this quasi-legal social shareholder primacy drive. And no legislators anywhere in the world want shareholder profit maximization to be the purpose of companies. It was meant as a tool to create good for society. And no legislators anywhere in the world intended companies to be run in such a way that they threaten the very basis of our existence. That is, we can say that also for sure. So we need to change. And we have concluded that an important reform would be redefining the purpose of the company expressly in legislation. What I'm presenting here is a draft paper for a Nordic reform proposal, which I'm writing together with Jukka, the chair of this session. We will also be presenting an EU law proposal, not at the conference, but afterwards. And there will also be other jurisdictional proposals that will be made. Our proposal here is actually codifying what is not said in Nordic company law. and including the aspect which legislators had no possibility of considering when they wrote the first Companies Acts, namely that we have to include the planetary boundaries as a boundary for everything. Andrew mentioned that we can discuss what is realistic, and the problem with using realistic here is that there's so many different definitions of what is realistic, and one is realistic as the status is today. We can say that introducing something like that into Companies Acts, that's not realistic. No politician will go for that today. But there's a different kind of realism that we need to deal with, and those are the planetary boundaries. If there was a limited amount of oxygen in this room, which there is, but there's enough for everybody, so don't worry. But say that some of us wanted to use more oxygen than would be our share. Then we could negotiate and we could say, okay, we're all so strong-willed person, so realistically we will arrive at the conclusion and we will adopt a law saying that we can all use 200% of the oxygen in this room. We would die. That's realistic. That's realism. So we need to remember that when we discuss our proposals. That is not just about what seems possible today, but we know that we cannot continue as we are doing. So we need to consider how to change, not whether. We have one formulation here, that the purpose of the company could be expressly said to be to create sustainable value through the balancing of the interest of its investors and other involved persons within the planetary boundaries. This can be formulated in a number of different ways, and we are very interested in your feedback on that. This also needs to be lifted up into the duties of the board. Today, we can deduct from the Nordic Companies Act that the duty of the board is to set the strategy and to promote the interests of the company. The Norwegian Companies Act doesn't even say that expressly, but that's the case. But we need to say expressly that the board has to promote this new purpose of the company and that it must do so through a life cycle-based analysis, to be able to identify and mitigate negative impacts, to change this. It has to consider, a manufacturing company has to consider this right from the first raw materials, from the first idea of a product, and to the end of the product's life. And we need to get this implemented into risk management systems, and we need to have a duty to ensure that due diligence is undertaken also for subsidiaries and supply chains. And as Andrew mentioned, an important issue is enforcement. We are thinking about proposing an annual environmental inspection to ensure that the company has complied with these new duties. And we need to do it in a way that protects but doesn't insulate the board. So, of course, boards would still be liable to the shareholders if they didn't ensure the financial sustainability of the company. But it should also be possible for other stakeholders to sue the board if it wasn't environmentally or also socially sustainable. And we need to support the sustainability shift through some type of integrated accounting. I'm not going to say that the discussion that is out there now about integrated reporting is going in the right direction. I don't know that. But some kind of integrated reporting, accounting, and not this CSR reporting. We need to have some kind of proper assurance that the reporting is accurate, that it's about the business of the company and how that is run. Not the consistency check that auditors cannot even carry out, which is the system today. And we need this to be a part of the jigsaw puzzle of sustainability, a new legal infrastructure. And therefore, we are very happy that we will be hearing lots of other proposals today as well that would need to support this kind of shift. Now, it would be best if we could introduce this all over the world at the same time. And if that isn't possible, which it isn't, it would be really great if our EU reform proposal was adopted by the EU. But it is also possible to do this first in the Nordic region. We have done things in our own Nordic way before. And what we are proposing here is to upgrade the Nordic model to the sustainable model. And that would give the Nordic region the market leaders of tomorrow. That would give the good companies the competitive advantage. What we do know for sure is that we cannot continue with business as usual. Thank you.